During the month of Elul, one of the things that we're told that we're supposed to do is introspection, as we call it cheshbon hanefesh, which is to do an audit of your own soul. It's quite an interesting expression, right? An audit of the soul. And the thinking is that, let's say for argument's sake, you were running a business, so you can't spend your whole time auditing the business. You've got to run the business. But at least once a year, you've got to work out where things are at. How well have you done? What are the successes and failures been of the past year? And to strategize how you're going to go forward. So by the same token, all year round, our focus is to do what it is that we have to do. We have certain responsibilities. We have mitzvahs. We're supposed to learn Torah. We're supposed to daven, reach out to other people, etc., etc. And quite frankly, when you're in the game, it's not a time to watch the scoreboard. So during the course of the year, the focus is just do. So if I'm supposed to daven this morning, then I should daven. And if I'm supposed to learn, then I should learn. And I don't necessarily have to tally up exactly where I'm holding. The greatness of Elul is that he has an opportunity for me to reflect. So to pause, not to, God forbid, stop what I'm doing, but to actually reflect. Okay, so if I look over the past year, how did it go? How good was my learning? How good was my davening? How well did I look out for other people? How much did I grow as a person, etc., etc. So it's a very honest time, which is difficult. It's a little bit overwhelming and frightening, when you have to be so honest with yourself. And not only that, it could be quite disappointing. If you had to sit down, can you imagine doing a spreadsheet of your spirituality? It's actually, by the way, I've tried this once or twice, and it's a fascinating thing to do. So if you literally make a whole series of topics, and then you rate yourself, on certain topics, and if you really do it well, you could do it over a few months. So you could start to track trends. So how's my learning been? How's my patience level been? How's my faith been? How well have I done with the focus during davening? How much tzedakah have I given? You can actually make a spreadsheet of the soul. It's a fascinating process to go through. And again, like I say, if you can do it over a course of months, so then by the way, Elul gets a little bit easier. So you don't just arrive at Elul and try to remember. So where was I 6 months ago? You pull up the spreadsheet, and at the end of each month, you've done like a very high level, general, overview. So it can be quite overwhelming for people and can be a little bit disappointing when you look back and you say, I had this kind of motivation and I had these intentions and I really expected that the following things were going to happen. And now when I reflect on it, it didn't quite go according to plan. And we might find that we've let ourselves down sometimes. We might find that we are not as committed as we had hoped to be, or we haven't advanced as far as we had hoped to advance. And maybe sometimes we've even gone backwards, which is the most disappointing of the lot. When you look and you say, I really think that I've regressed, which is not a great place to be. It's not somewhere that a person wants to feel that they are. So there's the danger that comes with introspection. There's the danger of depression. It can happen. And when I say depression, I mean like this heavy disappointment, which effectively could lead a person to say, well, considering how badly I've messed up, and that's a question really of how honest versus harsh I am. Sometimes we're too harsh on ourselves. Sometimes we're too accommodating of ourselves. So when I look back and I reflect, I might find that the conclusions I arrive at are not the conclusions I would have liked to have arrived at. Look how badly I've done. So it could become depressing. And the danger in that is that a person could then throw up their hands in exasperation and say, so what's the point? Why should I even try? I've promised myself so many times that I was going to improve. I've promised myself so many times that I would do X, Y, and Z. I've consistently let myself down. Why should I bother? I'm so-called a loser anyway. So that's a danger when it comes to introspection. Especially if you have that nature. Some people are more naturally inclined to be a little bit more what we call mora shchoira, which is like melancholic. Some people they get down more easily than others. So it could be a bit of a dangerous tightrope to walk, this process of reflection and introspection. So we need to learn a method that can allow us to both be honest and not to be swamped by our own honesty. Because if we're not honest, so then what's the point of the exercise? If I just want to have like a feel-good experience, when you do like those online surveys and you start to ask yourself, should I answer the question honestly, or should I answer it a little bit, just fudge the answer a little bit so that I get a good result at the end? When you do your discovery vitality, you do the test online, so they start asking you these questions about how many vegetables do you eat today? I don't know, I'll just like fudge the numbers a little bit to make it look better, you know? So ultimately that's within your choice. You can do that. It doesn't benefit to be dishonest. So on the one hand, we need to have honesty in our self-introspection. Otherwise, what's the point of the exercise? Equally, if not more important, is we have to have a method that allows me, at the same time that I'm honest, to guarantee that I don't fall to pieces when I confront my own honesty. So how do you find that balance? How do you find that balance? It's an interesting concept. So one of the methods that is taught in Hasidus is to be able to compartmentalize two classic and fundamental areas of our lives. And if we can successfully compartmentalize these two areas, then it allows us the opportunity to be brutally honest on the one hand and to remain safe on the other hand. So how do you compartmentalize? I have to tell ourselves as follows. There is me, and then there is what I have done and experienced. And they are not automatically synonymous. In other words, I don't have to define me purely based on my decisions and my actions or even my thoughts. Thoughts happen inside me, and actions happen from me. But neither one of them is me. So I need to compartmentalize that. Just to explain what that means. So we're taught that a human being, and more specifically a Jewish person, is comprised of two classic areas, which might fall into the generic terms body and soul, but more specifically is what we call an animalistic soul, an instinctive soul, and an essential soul, the essence of who I am, which we call the divine soul. So who's the real me? Is the real me the person who is instinctive and impulsive? Or is the real me the person who is pristine and divine? That's the first thing we have to be clear about even before we do an introspective process. So before I go through and start to decide how well do I daven, how much tzedakah do I give, am I a nice person, etc. Before I get to any of that, the first point of clarity that I have to have is my real self is my neshama. My neshama is a divine spark. It is the link between me and God. And here's the most important thing. It cannot be corrupted. My neshama can never be corrupted. Now that I know that, so I've given myself an anchor. I've created a secure environment which says whatever I'm going to expose now will never undermine the core of who I am. It will only explain where I've gone and what's happened to me. So to use an example, let's say for argument's sake that there was, God forbid, a parent and child who had a serious fallout. And as a result of that fallout, there was a lot of resentment, a lot of hard feelings. There was a period of time that they didn't communicate, didn't talk to each other. So if they want to reconcile, one of the healthiest things that they can do in order to reconcile is first and foremost to recognize that the relationship of a parent and a child cannot be corrupted. You can lose touch with the fact that that is your relationship, but you can never undo the relationship. That means to say there's nothing in the world that you could ever do that would make you no longer the genetic product of your parents. It's not possible. It is impossible. It doesn't matter how much bad sentiment there is. It doesn't matter how many hard feelings there are. It doesn't matter how much bad thinking there is. The core reality is that your DNA will always be linked. So now that you've established that, that basically says there's something that connects us that I could never destroy. Now that I have that point of confidence, let's go back and tackle all of the ugly things that happened between us. And now I know that there's a good chance that you'll take me back because our connection is so deep, even though we've totally wrecked that connection in terms of our experience and our awareness. So it's a similar kind of process with this introspection. Before we begin the introspection, the first point that we have to clarify in our own minds, and it has to become so compelling, is that I and Hashem have a connection that can never be corrupted. Why? Because the connection is the nature, it's the DNA of my soul. It's who I really, really am. All of the things that have happened to me over the course of my life have disrupted my awareness of my true self. That's what's happened. So I'm out of touch. I'm not inspired. I don't feel connected. I don't necessarily even believe this stuff anymore. Or I've made choices which are completely not aligned with that reality of who I am. And so that's why I'm adrift, and that's why I feel insecure, and that's why I'm not where I should be. And whatever, all the things that I'm really, really honest about are a recognition of how far I have moved from my core being. But that doesn't mean that my core being is no longer my core being. It is. It's just that I've gotten kind of lost. So the goal of introspection is not to beat myself up and say, how terrible, look what you did. How did you let yourself down? How did you destroy what you had? No, I cannot destroy what I had. So therefore, the introspection tells me, now that I recognize all of the things that have robbed me of the opportunity of being in touch with my own soul, which by extension is to be in touch with Hashem, now that I recognize that, so what I can do and what I should do is everything in my power to restore the default factory settings. To go back to a point where I recognize I am not the product of my choices. I am not the product of my toxic thinking. I'm not the product of myself letting myself down. Those are things that happened, and I want to reclaim who I am. And when I have that kind of confidence that I can reclaim who I am because it's the core of who I am, then I become motivated to say, okay, well, let me take the steps. They don't have to be earth-shattering steps, but let me take the steps that will bring me to that place. And then my introspection becomes not something that weighs me down and makes me feel bad. On the contrary, it makes me feel that there's always an incredible opportunity to start again, no matter where, no matter when, no matter what happened, no matter what stage I am in life, because ultimately it's just about restarting my core being rather than trying to reinvent myself. It's quite a profound and powerful thought to take with us.